Hello, my name's Rowan from Scrutinize This. So today we're going to be scrutinizing and reviewing a film which has kind of gone under the radar a bit this year. Maybe it could be a problem with its marketing or its publicity. It's a film called Barbie. Have you heard of it? I don't know if you've heard of that, maybe not. So we're going to be reviewing this film in the context of the Oscar nominations, or the Oscar Best Picture nominations, culminating in the final ceremony on the 10th of March. And on the panel, we'll have Dennis Hottie, our resident cinema savant, Badi Hassani, our resident film novice, and we're going to be exploring, does Mattel absolve itself from past sins, and does the film really deserve the same amount of 1-star reviews as 5-star reviews on IMDb? Let's go. So yeah, the way we'll do this is we'll go through the Oscar nominations and kind of comment on which one we agree with. So the first one is, which has been nominated for, and I guess which has a good chance of winning, is costume design.
I think then if we ask the question, what does good costume design need to bring to a movie? If we frame it in that way, because it's not really about necessarily fashion, but I guess the good costume design has to bring that movie to life. And I think, to be fair to Barbie, and maybe we'll diss it a bit more later on, or we might show it some love, but I think that the costumes may actually be one of the best things about the movie. I think it does bring the sort of world of Barbie to life in a way that is a bit more gratifying than I expected going into it, because the feeling is beforehand is like, how will they make this work? It's a bit like when they made the live action Pokemon film, and it's like, I've only seen these characters in 2D sketches and now I'm watching it in 3D. It's hard to make it work. So with Barbie, I thought, how are they going to make this work? But actually they did it on a way that was quite on the nose, quite funny, and they kind of lean into the whole costume design element of it. So actually I think it's a pro. I think it's got something going for it. I know Poor Things has got a bit of its own look and universe, but I think Barbie has something going for it. And if that wins, I wouldn't really roll my eyes. I think.
Yeah, I mean, but Poor Things has a certain uniqueness to the costume design, because obviously Barbie, they're taking it from the real Barbies, just actually like similar to the screenplay, because it's an adapted screenplay because of they're already Mattel characters. But in terms of costume, in terms of costume, Poor Things, it is unique, and it's kind of steampunk, sort of Victorian. It's something really fresh about it. So that might have a good chance. But yeah, costume in Barbie was pretty good. I mean, the thing is, it's hard for me to judge just not being in the Barbie world. I don't really know. I don't know.
But Rowan distancing himself. He's like, I've never even touched one.
It's not my thing.
Okay, listen. What do you mean?
I never had a Barbie with clothes on. It's they all came.
Right. Okay. This is a different podcast.
He's like the guy that I order them from takes the clothes off before they arrive to the house.
I just get naked.
I'm allergic to the material. I can't touch it.
Packaged and sealed. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway,
no.
But you can see how effective the costume is in the Barbie film when they go into the real world compared to what the normal world looks like, and how much they actually stand out.
Yeah.
So that's when it becomes apparent. Because when it's in Barbieland, you think, yeah, it's Barbie. They're all kind of dressing, but when they go into the real world, you see actually it does have its own identity as such.
Yeah.
So I think that's when you can make the distinction.
But it's despite the fact they're in Venice Beach, right, which is already a weird place full of eccentric people. Imagine if they were imagine if the real world was
they kind of lean into that joke actually. But that's one point. They do a good job of that, because one of the comedy elements there is that they do end up on Venice Beach, which, as you say, is kind of infamous for people roller skating and
a lot of randoms,
outfits,
a lot of
let's say.
Yeah.
But the fact that when she and obviously Barbie and Ken emerge, I guess the joke is that it's still quite outlandish, right? Even in the context of Venice Beach, which I thought that initial moment, and obviously we'll talk about the film more generally, but that initial moment when they emerge, that's a pretty good set piece in the sense of that they kind of defy expectations a little bit, because the whole feeling of it is like, how is it going to work when she's out in the real world? And the fact that it's just Margot Robbie dressing in weird things is pretty funny, actually. It worked quite well. But I mean, yeah, I don't want to go too far into the story. Obviously, we'll get into it later. But costume-wise, I'll give it a sort of thumbs up or 2 thumbs up. I forgot, what did Roger Ebert used to do?
2 thumbs
Yeah, I
up.
mean they're also quite sort of obvious with the costumes as well. There's a scene where she like throws them up and they like stay in the air like static, and then we see what they are. I can't remember any details, but they're quite self-aware about.
They're even
about
dated and things like that. Yeah, I remember that scene.
Yeah.
That worked quite well, actually, I thought.
And obviously you have Ken's like big mink sort of jacket thing, which looks quite similar to this mink jacket that Sylvester Stallone was wearing in that little masculinity segment. I don't know if you picked up on that. But
Really?
when he
Which
first
one?
discovers when that great scene, which I watched yesterday, it's a fucking cool scene, when Ken first discovers masculinity. He sees the fist bumping, he sees guys pumping in the gym.
Yeah.
And then you see this like these fast sort of stock images of Sylvester Stallone and John Travolta and stuff,
right.
just like showing what masculinity is and the presidents and all that shit.
Oh yeah.
But you see Sylvester
I thought
Stallone
he had a little cameo in
his,
it.
like,
I thought I
thing
missed it.
He's wearing this like big mink. He's probably holding a gun or something with this like big mink jacket, which looks quite similar to what Ken wears later on in the film.
So I guess that's what inspired him, that kind of post-Rocky look.
As if he's just hunted an animal and is wearing the hide on his back or something. But yeah.
The thing is, I can feel that this episode is just bubbling under the surface for Rowan to talk about patriarchy and masculinity and things like that. So we're just like rushing through. We're like, okay, a costume is
Right,
okay.
get to the good stuff.
Art direction is fine.
Fast forward.
But Rowan's like,
but I think you might be.
The
thing is, I'm going to bring nuance to this podcast. So we'll get there. We'll get there.
Listen,
okay, next up.
Just
So
us,
let's
just us three and the 8 listeners that we have.
So production design. What's actually one little piece of information which is actually quite relevant, and it's kind of relevant with Oppenheimer as well, is there's no CGI with the production design. All the productions are real sets made at Leavesden, the Warner Brothers sort of studios, which I think is quite a unique. And it's thinking about the film, I don't get that. A lot of CGI kind of has this glossy like veneer, which is nice. You didn't have that. Things felt quite real, even though it was in a very artificial Barbie world, Barbieland. So yeah, what do we think of the production design?
Yeah, I didn't know about the fact that everything was built. I mean, it does kind of look that way, I guess, to its credit somewhat. But I went and rewatched the film actually after the first time viewing it, and I rewatched it after we obviously discussed that we were going to watch it. And I will be fair to it, I actually thought the production design was better than my initial reaction to it. The first time I thought about the production design, I didn't really give it much props, to use that pun, but it isn't too bad actually, because once again, a bit like the costume design, they do use it to comedic effect quite good, I thought. And the fact that you say that a lot of it you said was actually physically done and built, I guess obviously that adds to the Barbie-ness of it all, and I guess that's really what you want. You want your production design to fit into the to the world of the film. So yeah, again,
it needs to look plastic, but also it's nice that it's not CGI. And I think the production designer Sarah Greenwood took notes from the director of The Truman Show. She wanted to have that look, very high key lighting, and sort of that artificiality to the Truman Show world, which I kind of think they do capture, because it kind of feels a bit like a Barbie Truman land, you know.
And obviously the Truman Show is, I think, a big inspiration for it, because when I watched it back, I was thinking about what's inspired this film, and the Truman Show was one of the first things that I.
But the Matrix, surely the Matrix really I feel the Matrix come up quite a lot. When they're in the Mattel building
Matrix?
and she come across, I did feel the Matrix.
No, you are right.
Elements
The Matrix in the Mattel building, I think there's a clear reference to the Matrix. Obviously, the philosophy of the Matrix is there, but
she stumbles
it's
across
everywhere.
sort of Ruth Handler in that. But it looks like it's like in a house in fucking Idaho. It doesn't look like it's in the Mattel building.
But also those offices. Yeah, those offices when she goes up,
the little
to
cubicles,
the floor,
and then
the little cubicles. It's very the Matrix,
Very,
but
very
also
Matrix,
it's also the Truman Show, because obviously there's that sort of head office that they watch it all from, and it gives that vibe quite a bit as well. So yeah, you know what? Actually, the more I'm sending myself into a little frenzy of positivity.
It's very reference heavy, the film.
No, he's turning on us.
But once you watch it again, you see these references which you didn't. I mean, there's the obvious ones like 2001 at the beginning, but a lot of it's a reference heavy film, which is it gets a bit annoying to an extent, like the Matrix sort of, because there's this Matrix like the Birkenstock or the high heel sort of thing, the red pill or the blue pill. Type thing, which are pretty on the nose references, but there's a lot more subtle ones.
Although one thing I will say is I do on the 2001 reference, because I think they do the Matrix reference well. I think the Truman Show and a few other things have obviously they seep in a little bit, but it annoys me when certain films reference something like 2001, but it feels a bit like, there's that subreddit like out of context. Sometimes I feel like people reference 2001, but they're not really referencing 2001. They're referencing the sort of cultural impact of 2001, if that makes sense. Because what are they really drawing on? Obviously, there's that early scene from 2001, but it doesn't feel like a legitimate.
No, not really. They're just sort of sucking off just so iconic. They're just,
exactly. It's more like because that music has become a sort of cinematic staple almost, more so than anything. But the Truman Show, the Matrix is it does it quite in a funny way, I think, and obviously subversive. Obviously, we'll get to the feminism and stuff like that, because I can see Rowan's got a fever building. But
no, you have a fever about me not having me having a fever, man. But it's not.
Bro, listen, this is our one chance to get you talk, because the rest of the movies won't touch on it that much. So we need to. This is all the juice here.
All right.
But yeah, costume design.
Okay.
I'll give it a thumbs up.
Production design.
Production design.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. One of the criticisms was it's just scaling up old, like sort of the Barbie doll houses, but there's more to it than that. We've given it some.
It also does a good job of capturing sort of a Malibu liminality once she leaves and goes into the real world, which I also found quite funny actually. So yeah, no, I'll give props to it. It does a good job.
Yeah, that's a thumbs up for Scrutinize This for production.
Guys, more production from you guys. Okay, great job.
More production. Keep up.
Okay, so we have supporting. Let's go to supporting actress, which is the next nomination for America Ferrera, who doesn't appear much in the film. But there's this kind of what may become sort of infamous or famous sort of speech about being a female in a male-dominated world. After she's moved to Barbieland. So I think her performance is it's quite good. It might not really match the tone of the film, but I kind of take back my previous criticism of that. So I think it's quite good. But what do you think about America Ferrera, Dennis?
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna say I think this is the first step of this sort of cynical nominations, because I kind of like America Ferrera, and she has a few roles which I think she does very well in, and obviously they're perfectly suited for her, and I've seen her in a few TV shows and things like that. But I think for me it needs to, if I'm the Academy Awards, right, and I've got to pick one performance, or let's just say in this case 5 nominations for the best supporting, is it supporting female, is that how they word it?
Yeah, correct.
Supporting actress.
So I have to pick from all the movies that came out in that relevant space of time, I've got to pick 5 performances for best supporting actress. for me, they have to be performances that person adds a kind of, I don't know, adds a presence, a sort of power to the movie. And the America Ferrera character is just I don't know, it's her performance in it. I can see why they've nominated her from a cynical point of view, but I don't think it's that good. And obviously we'll talk about more of the performances, but I think the performances of this movie, they verge, I think, even on the boring a little bit. And obviously she has that speech where that's going to obviously do a lot of heavy lifting, and I like the speech, and I think in the context of the movie it works, and it adds something. It adds to the world they're trying to build. But her performance in it is very sort of very TV show, right? If someone just showed me that out of context, it's not a performance that I'd watch on YouTube. You know, sometimes you go on YouTube and you'll watch a clip of like, oh, the scene where he does this or the scene where she does that. That isn't a performance where I'd ever want to go back and say, oh, let me see how she delivers this line or whatever. To me, it's just a bit sort of TV show, table read kind of performance.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the film does have that
down.
TV feel to it. You mentioned the comedy feels quite SNL. In a way, the acting does feel kind of Disney Channel. And it's kind of hard to extricate yourself because it's overacted. A lot of it is overacted. America Ferrera is overacted in a lot of it. But it's hard to extricate that from the fact it's Barbie, you know, and it needs to be overacted to an extent. But what do you think, Buddy, about her performance?
Oh, I mean, the fact that she's been nominated for an Oscar for that role, I mean, I think it's ridiculous. Again, film novice here, but I wasn't particularly impressed. I mean, even the movie overall, like
she
you say,
didn't convince you about the injustices of the patriarchy.
She not that much. No, I think they still exist to some extent.
Okay. So she did a good job, I think.
I don't know. I mean, we're talking about all the supporting actresses. We discussed some of the other contenders, and we're talking about the Oscars here. And I don't see. It didn't convince me. It didn't give. I would never rewatch any of her scenes and go, "Wow, that is quality. That is great." I wouldn't personally. It wasn't for me. It definitely wasn't for me. And even the film in general, I didn't think it was fun. Like you say, it's a Disney film. I think there was one scene I laughed at, and that's when what's his name, Ryan Gosling slides down the hood of the car slowly. That's the only scene that kind of made me giggle.
What's funny is I fucking laughed quite a lot of the film. It's a lot of the jokes don't land, but it's I thought it was pretty funny.
Fair enough.
But I think Ryan Gosling's performance, and we said this last time, but obviously I think we had to redo the podcast. But I think he's for me, he can't be replaced like Margot Robbie potentially could be replaced in that role. He lends a unique sort of funniness to it, and that coupled with these dance routines, he does funny. He obviously is good looking. He does the dancing as the whole Ken package for me. So yeah,
I've been trying so hard.
We'll be moving on to the Ryan Gosling nomination because he's up next. But
I've been trying my best all episode to skirt around the fact that we're redoing this podcast. I've been trying to fucking word everything in a way that sounds but it's actually
new. And he just pulls the curtain behind and goes,
everyone's
guys, here's a little sneak.
Everyone's like, we've been here for 6 hours trying to film the fucking thing, all right?
This is our fourth attempt.
I'm here I just these are just thoughts, dude. Like,
I've just watched it like an hour ago.
Novel thoughts. But now you're dwelling on it. You're just
if I'd known
salt into the wound, Dennis.
Now, if I'd known that we can just say that we've re-recorded it, I'd have been like, listen, guys, fucking watch the old one. Like, let me get to sleep. Jesus.
Okay, well,
what were we talking about? America Ferrera.
No. We moved Ferrera's old newsman. We moved
Ken. We kind of transitioned.
I was saying. You obviously wasn't listening. So I'll recap.
Wow.
Let's move on. Let's move on to Ryan Gosling. He does, because I think he has a shot at this. It would be pretty crazy if he wins the nomination for Barbie. But I think
it wouldn't be crazy. It would be an
Oscar-winning job.
Crazy as if it sets on fire mid-show. Stupid as if he wins it, because It's not. It honestly isn't that funny. It's funny. It's funny in a way that a 13-year-old girl would share it on TikTok. But even so, let's even say I don't.
Yeah.
The
I mean,
the
even they have a level
comedic.
of quality.
But even like, let's even say my comedic sort of no, I don't want to say standard even. I don't say my sort of opinion on it isn't necessarily it's not aimed at me. Let's use that sort of pointless phrasing. It's not aimed at me, right? But again, going back to what I said about the American Ferrero thing, for me, the best performance is it doesn't necessarily have to be because people always err on the side of, oh, it has to be a serious performance. It has to be about, a war. It has to be. I don't think of it in that way at all. I think some of the best performances are comedic and they can be funny. But I mean, you mentioned the SNL. I mentioned it when we last did the podcast, but
This is our first time doing it. It's our first time doing it. Shh.
But I'm first of all, I'm not a fan of that SNL style of comedy. But the main reason I'm not a fan of it is because it's so reliant on it being everything has to be ironic, everything has to be kitsch, everything has to be on the nose. It's a bit like the sort of Disneyfication and the mediocrity that everything has to turn into. Whereas like we don't have to actually make this funny because you guys know the irony of the fact that it's Ryan Gosling being Ken, and that's enough. And all he really has to do is ride that horse.
But also the breaking of the fourth wall, which happened multiple times with the narrator, commenting on her own jokes, and saying a line and then saying, "Oh, but Margot Robbie is the worst person to play for this in this context," something like that. But also the songwriting as well. The song will dip in and comment on the actual what we're seeing on. It's just not funny.
I'll give
those
you an
jokes
example.
are fucking lame as hell.
I'll give you an example of that you could make something in that mold, and I'll use this example because obviously Will Ferrell is in this movie, and I think he's actually the only funny person in this movie. But if you look at a film like Elf, I think is a great example of that. You can take that brand of comedy, you can take that brand of very sort of ironic kitsch comedy. But Will Ferrell's performance in Elf, for me, if the standard is that Ryan Gosling is nominated for this movie, then Will Ferrell should have won it for Elf because he has to drive something that doesn't even exist really aside from the notion of Santa and elves. It's not like an existing character. He has to drive that all on his own, comedically.
Yeah, that style is kind of new. It's kind of new to the audience.
What is Ryan Gosling? What is Ryan Gosling really doing here that's good performance? I like Ryan Gosling and I like him in serious roles and I think he's funny in some roles and I even like his indie movies when he was first sort of emerging. But what is he really doing in this that I'm supposed to be wowed by? He makes me laugh a few times, but there's videos on YouTube that make me laugh and I don't give them the best Oscar award. So the thing for me is that obviously the America Ferrera thing, she plays the mum and she leans into a few things. It makes a bit more sense. I wouldn't sort of vomit at the thought of her winning it. But Ryan Gosling for it is a bit of a. It's like I'd need some sort of breakdown of what they think is deserving of his performance because he does nothing more than what he does when he's on the Graham Norton show, except he's dressed as Ken. So I don't really. For me, that's a complete. No.
I see what you mean about your first point about comedic actors. They have to sort of carry the movie in a unique way, which they don't get recognition in the Oscars historically, which is a good point. The thing is, the Ken character is not. It's a supporting role, and I think he does a great job of being narcissistic, insecure, funny. Acting like Ken. I think he did it. I think looking like Ken.
So I know. But looking because to act like Ken,
the whole package was a pretty good Ken.
Yeah, the thing is, something can work, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily good. I think that's an important differentiation because obviously the discussion here is about the best supporting performance of all of the films that came out that year. So we have to remember that the thing is, it's best supporting performance. It's not necessarily like, I mean, they've manipulated the source material quite well, and it works. And obviously, they extrapolate from it the idea that Ken emerges into patriarchy, and he's like, well, hold on a minute, there's something inherently quite funny in that, and obviously the subversion of it works well, and obviously that's become the big talking point. So now you've got, and it's smart from the film's point of view, because now you've got a bunch of alt-right podcasts saying, oh, they're shitting on men, and you've got more sort of liberal podcasts saying, oh, this is very pro women and so on. So Ken, as being the sort of prism of that, works well, but I think that's all in the writing. I think that's all in the structure of the movie, the filmmaking. Ryan Gosling does a great job, but it's no different to, like, I don't know what to say. Like I said, his performance on like the Graham Norton show, he is funny. He is inherently quite charismatic and funny and charming, and he's obviously able to carry physically. But what is that performance more? So I think if he wins for that, I think they have to go back and retrospectively give Jim Carrey 450 Oscars, because Jim Carrey does that.
I agree.
Over and over again in every single movie.
I agree with that, but both things can, I think the way he fulfills that role, and it's a supporting role, right? He's supporting the other characters in the narrative. He's not the main guy. I agree with the snubbing of comedic, people before, but I think he does a perfect Ken. Replace him with someone better. But give me an example of someone who could, an actor.
I'll give you an even, but I'll do one
job.
more than that. I'll do one more than that. I will just say that you could take another Ken in that movie. Obviously, there's various Kens, Simu Liu and stuff like that. Also Ken.
Yeah.
You could just do a switcheroo, and they would be the same Ken. Your phrasing of it of
no, I don't think that's right though.
Is means what? The perfect Ken is what? He's the only one we've had, so it's of course he's a perfect one. Like, yeah, he's just playing a doll who is arguably working with quite a funny premise.
But obviously, compared to another actor who could do the job, I think he does it. I don't think the other Kens could have done that at all.
I think John Cena makes it.
Well, he's not cameo. Ken. He's Alan. So
yeah, no, that's Michael Cera. Michael Cera is Alan. Michael Cera is Alan.
Right.
But I'm saying John Cena.
Fair enough.
He's like a little genie that pops up.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's a genie, but he pops up.
Dua Lipa, I think, was Barty's cousin, but
it's not my cousin.
He stars in that remake. I'm hesitant to call it remake of Suicide Squad, and he plays a kind of, it's almost similar, it's Ken-like role. So just to sort of bounce off your point, I think John Cena could have been an equally funny Ken. And again, that's not me saying it with any kind of distaste towards Ryan Gosling. I think there are roles that Ryan Gosling should have been nominated for and that he's very good in. And I like a lot of his movies. I think he's actually quite underrated in some of his other roles. But in this, I'm gonna have to stand my ground here, because I went and rewatched it after you talked about him being funny and stuff like that, and I found him even more unfunny than the first time around. I didn't think he was that funny. A lot of
agree to disagree. I think he's
outside
hilarious.
of the cinema.
Have we discussed the contenders? Have we discussed who's going up
the
against?
thing is,
could have been a contender.
The problem is we haven't seen those, so let's keep it. We'll get there. We'll get to the contenders.
Okay, give us some past. Wait, hold on. Let's have some past winners. Let's. You know what, guys? Let's podcast. Okay, we're about to podcast. Yeah. Everyone, take your shoes and socks off. Okay, let's podcast. Okay, we'll go back from this year. So, last year, just a few. I'm gonna name a few that are better. I won't name all of them. So, Brendan Gleeson, Barry Keoghan, both of them from Banshees of Inisherin. Those are two great supporting performances. If we go back even more, we've got, so going back to 2021, Daniel Kaluuya in Judas and the Black Messiah. It's a great, underrated movie, I think, and his performance in that is very good. Going even more, Al Pacino in The Irishman, Brad Pitt, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood he was the winner, but I think deserving of that. Joe Pesci in The Irishman, again, a much better performance. I think
I mean, I haven't seen The Irishman, but Joe Pesci in every fucking Scorsese film has been the same one-dimensional, like fucking gangster, wannabe gangster.
But you just said it. You haven't seen it. He's not.
Shit. I don't think.
Nah,
Ken-
he's
Ken-
different in The
Ron,
Irishman.
Oh, really?
You've just tripped
Okay,
up.
fine.
Flipped it.
You've just tripped up over your own.
Oh, wow.
I
Wow.
admit I
Hoisted
haven't
by
seen
your
it.
own petard.
I like how Rowan said, I haven't seen it, but this is the reason I'm disliking it.
For
All
the
right, but I think
listeners-
No,
I think
no.
Ken still stands as a.
No, but listen,
but no,
listen.
it
The
is different.
podcast is here. The podcast is here to prove me right and to prove everyone else wrong. So, but okay. I mean, let's. I don't. Did we? We didn't give Bardi a chance to give his proper sort of reaction to Ken. So wait, let me close this tab and we get back into it. But I mean, those are just my feelings in it. But Bardi, where do you stand?
Yeah, it's somewhat the same. As I mentioned earlier, apart from that one scene that made me laugh, the role doesn't really stand out to me. You know, we've seen similar stuff, that style of comedy in the past, and I have to kind of echo what you said, that if he wins based off comedy, you know, that award, then you have to go back and give some other people their props as well.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm comparing it against to, because, you know, to say he's a perfect Ken, I don't know. I don't know what Ken is as such. I know he's the sort of counterpart to Barbie, you know, when you buy the toys, but I didn't think the performance was all that. He, like I say, made me laugh once, but I wasn't impressed. I wasn't impressed overall.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
that's my stance.
No, I mean, he made me giggle, so I'm rooting for it. I mean, to be honest, the ones we have compared to are Mark Ruffalo, Poor Things, Robert De Niro, Killers of the Flower Moon, Robert Downey Jr., who's looking like a hopeful, Oppenheimer, Sterling K. Brown, American Fiction. We'll be reviewing these soon. But we'll keep this in mind.
I think Ryan Gosling should stay home
I
when
was
this
going to
award.
say now. I've
Ryan Gosling.
I've actually seen all of the movies I've been talking for the nominations that you've said, and I'm going to be honest with you. He's
Bottom of
he
the
doesn't
bunch.
fit in that. Yeah, he didn't.
No,
Fit
he
in
doesn't.
that.
No, it's partly the quaintness of it. He doesn't fit in, but that kind of makes it kind of unusual.
Yeah. Well, again, let's go along and we talk about, because I'm gonna rant a bit later on about mediocrity, and I may even mention Taylor
Dennis is
Swift.
going red.
So
Dennis is going red.
yeah, so let's
Is that for this podcast or the Oppenheimer podcast?
Hey, bro! Hey. Surprises, Kinder surprise over here.
All right,
Nah,
okay,
all for
just
the
go with the
podcast.
flow.
I'll
All right.
save the juice for afterwards.
Okay. We disagreed vehemently on that, but anyway, let's move on to writing. Okay, so this is where I think the Academy is fucking up big time, at least in my opinion. Because they've got a best adapted screenplay. As I mentioned, they're adapted. It's not original. They're adapting it from the Mattel characters. So, and who is this? That is Greta Gerwig, and that is Noah Baumbach. What do we think? Writing. Does it deserve this accolade?
hold on. Why is it adapted?
It's adapted
Is
because
there
they're adapting
like a-
characters from Mattel. So
Okay.
it
So
was
it's
an
existing
the choice for the Oscars. Yeah.
Yeah, because we
didn't write
discussed
any
this. We discussed this
characters.
last time around, which is that obviously adapted versus original. But obviously, you're saying the rationale there is that they're existing characters and so on.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah. I mean that
It's a
is
bit tenuous,
strange-
but that's the decision.
Yeah, it's a
they
strange
made.
decision a
Yeah.
little bit. But having said that, I mean, okay. So where do you stand, Ron? We'll let you kickstart this time. Where do you stand on the quality of the writing?
Well, it has some major. I mean, the mechanics of the plot are pretty borderline. Sort of, like there's some major malfunctions there. The fact,
Ron,
like,
I'm gonna cut you there.
why do they?
We need to cut you'd have to go back and use another word, because I don't think people like hearing people say I think that's a bit of a no word.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I think the writing, there is some major flaws. The mechanics of it don't really work out. Why did the Mattel execs follow her back to Barbieland? Why does Barbie bring back America Ferrera and the kid? It was this contrivance sort of after contrivance, which wasn't, I don't know, that had problems. We can dive into the ideological aspect as well, because I think they're kind of trying to, the tone isn't consistent, and they're kind of trying to appease a lot of standpoints at the same time. But yeah, let's get you guys' take.
Yeah, so there's sort of two prongs here. One is that if we're looking at it as an adapted screenplay, because in my mind, I mean, first of all, adapting a screenplay, there's a kind of art form to that, which is why I'm a little bit disappointed that this comes under best adapted screenplay. Because I mean, last time we spoke, I used the example of something like, let's say, for example, Moonlight. Moonlight comes from a theatre play that's obviously been adapted into a feature screenplay, and there's an art form there to take in subject matter and transferring it into the big screen without losing the essence of that, which is harder said than done, right? Or even if you're adapting from a short film, or if you're adapting from a TV show, or often the case that you'll adapt from a foreign film, right? So you have to bring it into, let's say, your language, your culture, the big screen, wherever it is, and not lose the essence. So on that side of it, I mean, I give some credit to Barbie for managing to pluck out the right amount of Barbiness and bring it into the big screen in a way that's clearly worked. It's obviously made a lot of money. It's got us talking about it. So in that sense, it's worked. But does it really deliver in any quality? I think the line here to be drawn is that it does make some good cultural points, which obviously we can discuss among us three. But in terms of a feature script, I like to think of it in a way that if there's no Barbie, if you pluck the Barbiness out of it and it's just a feature script, it's pretty rubbish largely. So I would say I can't see
What do you
it
mean,
really
like take
winning.
Margot Robbie's character out of it? How do you mean?
So imagine it's not a Barbie movie. Imagine this is just we take
Oh
the
wait, you
subject matter and the scenes that
supplant the
happen.
setting and everything.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. It's supplant the setting exactly. If you because right now, like I said, it's working because it's using that sort of diversion tactic
The
of saying,
Barbie iconography and the branding.
yeah, they're almost acting
yeah,
on the procedure of you going in and being like, whoa, that wasn't bad for a Barbie film, right? Because it's you see it a lot in even things like pop, or you see it in like when there's like a child star and they star in their first film as an adult. There's always that sense that they sort of play with, which is that, oh, it wasn't actually that bad, right? It wasn't that bad for a animated movie. It wasn't that bad for a kids movie. It wasn't that bad for this. So they obviously have the benefit of leading you into it, being like, look, this is just Barbie, right? Don't expect too much. And then they're kind of like, but hold on, look what we're doing. There's some feminism here. Relax, everyone. So
it's a smart move. It's a smart move when you think about it, because they set the bar so low. It's like, listen, it's just a plastic doll, but wait, and then it hits you with it. Yeah.
Listen, it's been done and tested over and over again, because if it wasn't, if it didn't work that way, you wouldn't have like, Justin Timberlake or whatever, because they've got to play with that thing of being like, whoa, like the fourth guy from NSYNC, like he's actually not that bad, right? Because all he has to do is just not be complete shit. He can just, even the most basic mediocrity can come out and they can be like, oh, actually, look, he's actually a pop star, or Barbie actually works, right? So I don't know. I'm divided on it, because the cynicism is almost so good. I kind of respect it, but at the same time, I prefer not respecting cynicism. So I don't know. For people who haven't watched it, and there's like 8 people left in the UK who haven't seen this film now. The Barbie dolls in Barbieland are all sort of manifestations of existing dolls in the real world owned by someone, and obviously that ownership reflects on their sort of Barbieland persona. And Margot Robbie's sort of as the titular Barbie is obviously feeling a bit down and depressed and things like that, which I actually kind of like that element of it to an extent. But they sort of do this, they sort of subvert your expectations by making you think that the daughter of America Ferrera is the owner of the Barbie doll, and obviously she finds out that's actually her mother that owns the Barbie doll, and the mother's the one having these sort of feelings of angst and is
this
anxious
element of the plot which is the meta element which speaks to me the most. And going back to the Matrix reference, just thinking about the fact there's the real world and then the Barbie world, and there's these links between the two. It's quite fucking Matrixy. Whether they reference it sort of obliquely or not,
I think they do.
There's a lot of parallels.
I think they undoubtedly do, and I think they also there's things like Toy Story in there as well, which arguably Toy Story does it a lot better than Barbie. But I do like that, and I also, like I said, I like and we obviously talked about Ryan Gosling, but I think the casting of Margot Robbie in that role, I think, is the best thing about the movie. And I know that we kind of disagree on that, but I think for Margot Robbie specifically to be in that role is pretty clever. And I think she actually, in my point of view, she walks away with her head held highest, because she has a pretty hard job to do, and she does it best, I think, because for me the most redeeming feature of the script is the fact that it kind of puts out on a plate this initial, and I mentioned this on the last podcast, where I said obviously we're three guys here, we're going to have to talk about women's feelings and feminism and stuff like that, but I'm going to give it a shot. So anyone that hates me for it, I respect it. I mean, I don't like making things seem universal when they're not, because I don't know what women experience and go through, so I'm just going to reflect on how the movie presents it to us. But I think it's clever that Margot Robbie, who's at the top of her game, height of her fame, she's considered in terms of whatever media to be the most beautiful actress, and she's obviously leans into the fact that, hold on, even I can feel down, even Barbie, even the perfect in inverted commas woman can feel down. So with that, I both enjoy her performance, and I have some respect for the story, the plot, the script. But obviously there's another side of that coin, which is that because I do find the film overall to be quite mediocre, what's happened is that people have latched on to the fact that obviously she's not nominated, and that's become quite a big deal. I was going to ask,
what do you think about her not being nominated? Because a lot of people have been not happy with that decision.
I think it makes sense that she's not nominated, because I like the performance, as I've just said, but I don't think it's in the top 5 best of the year.
But what do you think about that decision in relation to, in contrast with Ryan Gosling being nominated? The fact he's been nominated and she hasn't. What do you think that says?
Well, it makes the fact that he's nominated somewhat more bizarre, I would say. That he has been nominated, I should say. It makes it even more bizarre. But I think in an ideal world, neither of them would have been nominated, because I still think both of them are sort of teetering on mediocrity, but her performance being better than his one is.
With Barbie, if it wasn't the Barbie aspect of it, the storyline doesn't work. And I think, now it's maybe controversial, but if it didn't have the topics that it has, about feminism, equality and all that, would people really care about this film overall?
Well, the thing is the feminist aspect of it, Dennis will have some insights into this, because I remember Dennis in a podcast we obviously didn't record. Mattel does this kind of 3D chess game where it's absolving itself in a weird way, because it doesn't, because obviously the main critique of Barbie is that it's very consumeristic, it's objectifying women, but it paints itself self-reflexively, Mattel itself, in the film as sort of, we didn't realize we were doing this.
I think I was going to try and naturally, organically lead back into this point again through talking about Margot Robbie, because I was going to say about her sort of reaction to her lack of a nomination, which I can understand, because obviously a lot of people have latched onto her as an image, and that tends to happen. Obviously it happens, we can see it happening at the same time with someone like Taylor Swift, for example, now, which is that there's a kind of through line that runs through these people, which is that they both represent a kind of minority aspect in the fact that they're women, but at the same time they're still very powerful white women. And you have people now who feel the need to sort of, jump in front of a bullet for these people for reasons that are maybe somewhat noble, but without them realizing are not as noble as they think. So to go back to the point you were making, is that the film has been very clever with this, and Mattel has obviously been very clever with this, because if we look at what Barbie is the objectification of women in toy form, right? So someone's been clever enough to market and sell a toy form of the objectification of women, but not only that, to sell it directly to girls, right? Sell it to mums and girls and young children. So and to an extent the objectification of boys, but less so. Obviously Ken and characters like that are the stakes aren't as high as it is with women. And what they've done is, over the years, they have obviously introduced, and they lean into this heavily in the movie, which is, there's President Barbie, and there's Barbies of different ethnicities and backgrounds and sizes and things like that.
It's aspirational, basically, because I mean the film itself comments in the first scene that before Barbie there wasn't the aspirational element. It was just girls looking up to dolls, pretending to be mothers, sort of thing. What Barbie does differently, and it kind of pioneers, is the fact women through Barbie can see themselves as being an astronaut, as president, as whatever profession they want. So it's the aspirational thing, which
and that's kind of the 4D chess that Marvel, saying bullshit, but that Mattel is playing, right? Because in the movie now, what Mattel has done is they've kind of I'd made a good point about this last time. I'm trying to retrace my steps a little bit, but Mattel,
you're wearing the same clothes, we can just cut you in.
The movie is same deodorant as well. In the movie, we've got Mattel as embodied by someone who I mentioned earlier, obviously Will Ferrell and his team of white men, which they're kind of on the nose about, but what they do is they subvert that in a clever way, because in order to absolve themselves of that sort of past sin, they make their sort of shareholders, I think that's how they're referred to in the movie, they make them idiots, basically. And it's this idea that they're running around like something from the Wacky Races, sort of chasing Barbie and getting her back into her thing, but it's kind of like, oh look, she's out of the
and they're kind of responding
Barbieland.
to the time as well. They're kind of just a reflection of the culture, sort of thing. Because
Exactly.
there's actually one scene where Will Ferrell doesn't know whether depressed Barbie is going to work, but one of his execs says, yeah, it's going to make money, so let's do it.
Yeah,
they're kind of just reactive in a way.
yeah, and that in itself is pretty clever, right? Because what are they really saying to us when we're sort of watching it? They're kind of saying to us, they're like, look, we didn't mean harm, right? We just were sort of reacting to the times, and it's in a way it's weird for the director to, I mean, she's kind of having a cake and eating it, which is, I think, the most common kind of I think it's the most common thing that people in power do, is have their cake and eat it, because I think all the points about something like feminism and things like that are pretty good, but if you then try to whitewash something like the history of Mattel and the history of Barbie, which arguably they can turn around and say, but hold on, we're quite open about it, but we make a joke out of it and so on. But at the same time, you can then ask the meta question of being like, so why do we need this movie? Because there's even a scene, I went and rewatched it after we did the Secret podcast, and there's a scene where I'd forgotten, but it's like the creator of Barbie, who I thought it was the real woman, and I went and googled it. It's not the real woman.
No, it's an actress, Rhea Perlman.
Yeah, and in the movie, she lays out these like idealistic
she comes in at the
goals.
end, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I was like, this is bullshit. I was like, this is a fucking doll designed. Okay, let's say some lady designed this doll, but it's like, oh, for all these reasons. But it's like, but no, because it's a doll that I went and found articles throughout all the last few decades of people being like, this doll is bad for self-esteem. This doll is bad for for young girls. This doll sets unrealistic standards and so on and so forth. So
So
I
do you
don't know
think
if
Mattel is looking
it's.
to reverse some of the damage that is actually done to society by including itself in this film?
So
I
like, I
think
can't
it's even more.
reverse, but it's kind of adapting its image.
But I think it's even more. It's even more sneaky than that. I think it's just that how can we make money now? Because the to answer your question, buddy, imagine we rephrase it to be like, is it doing the thing that it sort of just needs to do to make money,
Yeah.
or is it like a heartfelt apology, right? Because right now, in terms of the sort of financial gain, Barbie's hits the jackpot, right? Because it knows exactly how to fester from each audience, how to get reaction from each audience. So the argument there is that I don't really think they're trying to be apologetic or anything like that. I think that they've seen that this is the sort of status quo. This is a la mode at the moment. And if we do this, we'll make money. And they were on the money. They were completely right. They are like, this is the money ball of movie making, because they've taken all the right assets at the right time to make something that, it is watchable, it is enjoyable to some. I didn't find it that enjoyable. But ultimately it makes a lot of money, right? And it's obviously been lightning in a bottle. So the cynicism of it all for me means that it's not a great movie, but I think that in terms of whoever did the market research and all of that, I think they deserve a raise, because they've hit every ball out of the park in that sense.
Barbie
out
on
of 10,
Barbie. Let's go.
Barbie, reviewing Barbie, I have to give it, and this is my first time doing the review, 5 out of 10.
Okay.
I think the message, the themes are very, very important, but I wouldn't watch the film again. I didn't find it funny. I wasn't really entertained by the movie at all, and yeah, I have to give it 5. I think Barbie's biggest wins would, the fact that it's even nominated for any Oscars, would probably be costume and production to a degree, but overall, I think it's a 5 out of 10 for me, and I wouldn't watch it again.
Okay.
For me,
Would you watch it again, Dennis?
I'm gonna have to actually
Looks so nonplussed.
echo and I was actually just looking up at
Birth rates.
the other best picture and the best picture nominees. But as a standalone review, I'm gonna say the same. I'm gonna say it's a 5 out of 10. I think it perfectly down the middle. I think it does enough well, but it does enough badly for it to be a sort of perfect 5, if that's possible. But I think it is middle of the road. But
Okay.
yeah, 5 out of 10.
Does it deserve to make 1.3 gazillion?
I mean, I mentioned that we would get into what films make money, but I think when we talk about Oppenheimer, I'll sort of root back to why certain films make money and why some don't, arguably. But we'll leave that for another episode, because
All right,
it's getting
that's
on
cool.
a bit.
Okay, yeah, it's fine. All right, I'll give Barbie a 6, gone up from my earlier 5, just because I find it fun. I find it
trio.
I'm breaking this
Breaking the mold.
agreement. But yeah, it was it was fun. It had its flaws, obviously, but it's highly watchable. And I think some of the scenes, like when he discovers masculinity and scenes like that, they hit really well, and they're well produced. So yeah, it had a lot going for it. But I do think and it was better the second time, because a lot of the references are funny, even if they're not really intrinsic to the plot. So yeah, I think it's not a bad one, and Ryan Gosling should get the Oscar. So that's that.
Ron, if he does,
Okay.
I'm gonna buy you a little Ryan Gosling sticker to celebrate.
Okay.
That's
sticker.
the least.
I'm gonna get him a
Could you
poster,
get me a mint coat?
a little cardboard cutout.
I'm gonna pay for Ryan
Ryan
Gosling to come to your house, sleep over.
That's how much money Dennis has, guys. So remember that, yeah.
Okay.
Listen, this podcast is paying me a healthy amount. I'm up there with Chris Evans for salaries. Next year's Forbes is going to just be me on every page.
Well, you're almost there.
Cool. All right, that's that, guys.
All right.
Scrutinize this.
All right.